Matthew chapter 3, take a look at verse 1. In those days, John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." This is he who is spoken of through the prophet Isaiah, quote, "A voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, or the way of the Lord, make straight paths for him." This is a prophecy from Isaiah that is quoted not only in Matthew, but in all four Gospels. And if you know anything about New Testament scholarship, that is quite rare. And it's a prophecy about the way of the Lord. Now in Greek, that word that we translate the way is hodos. Can you say that? Hodos, great job. And it literally means a road or a path or a journey that you go on. But over time, it became a word picture for a way of life. A journey that you and I take to grow and mature into a set of behaviors that make for a life well lived. And it's used not only by the writer Matthew, but all through the New Testament. In fact, it's used over 100 times, and 62 of those times are used in the Gospels with Jesus of Nazareth. Let me show you just a few examples. Turn to the right to Matthew chapter 7. We're teaching through the Sermon on the Mount. We oscillate back and forth between a book of the Bible and a practice, and so we'll get back to Matthew in just a bit. But notice the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus has this to say, chapter 7, verse 13. "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the hodos in Greek, or road in the NIV, or the way that leads to destruction, and many enter through it, but small is the gate and narrow is the hodos, the road, the way that leads to life, and only a few find it." Okay, so for Jesus, there's more than one way on offer. There is a hodos, there is a way, there is a road of life that you journey down that ends in destruction, and it's a broad one. There's all sorts of people. It's quite popular. And then there's another way. It's a whole other way to live and be human. And the end result of that road, the destination, is life itself. And of course, this raises the question, is Jesus talking about the future and the present? Is this about what we think of as heaven, or is this about earth? And of course, the answer is both. The future is no more than a continuation of the present. You are becoming eternity right now as we speak. And there is a way that leads to death, and there is a way that leads to life. Turn over to Matthew chapter 22. Just one more sample, Matthew chapter 22. Here's another story that is in all four Gospels. Take a look at verse 15. "Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their apprentices to him along with the Herodians. 'Rabbi,' they said, 'we know that you are a man of integrity and that you,'" notice, "'teach the way,' or the hodos of God, 'in accordance with the truth.'" And the story goes on. Notice the Pharisees thought of Jesus as a rabbi or as a teacher, and what did Jesus teach? The way of God, meaning the way that God intended human beings to flourish and thrive. Now, this same metaphor of the way is used not only by Matthew, but also by Mark, also by Luke, also by John, and then into the New Testament. In the book of Acts, it's used as a one-word moniker for the church. Here's a few examples. Quote, "Saul asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus so that if he found any there who belonged to the way," it's even capitalized in the NIV. "But some of them became obstinate. They refused to believe and publicly maligned the way." Here's one of my favorite lines in all of the New Testament. "About that time there arose a great disturbance about the way." How good is that? "I persecuted the followers of this way to their death. I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of" what? "The way." Then Felix, he's a king, a political authority, who was well acquainted with the way, and the story goes on. Long before we used words like Christianity or the phrase the Christian faith or even the label Christian, we weren't called Christians or even the church. We were just called followers of the way, or it was just called the way. Now, that's just a very small sample of the 101 times that hodos is used in the New Testament alone, not to mention the Hebrew equivalent, which is used 707 times in the Old Testament. My point is, this isn't like a one-off kind of throwaway off the top of so-and-so's head metaphor. This is a major theme running all the way through the Bible from cover to cover. And in it, hidden in plain sight, is something that I believe we have lost in the Western post-Reformation church, and that is this. The way of Jesus is just that. It is a way of life. It's not just a set of ideas that we believe in our head, or what we call the Bible and theology. It is that, but it's more. It's not just a list of do's and don'ts that we obey or disobey, or what we call ethics. It is that, again, but it's more. It's a lifestyle. But so often in the church, at least in the tradition that I grew up in, so much is said about what to believe or not believe, what to do or not to do, but so little is said about lifestyle. But lifestyle is where the money's at. You see, Jesus would regularly get up in front of a crowd of people, just like this one, and he would make this bold, audacious, provocative, people thought it was blasphemous claim. He would claim that he had life on offer. Here's a few samples just from the writer John. Quote, "Very truly I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life." Or another way to translate that is the life of the age to come. So this doesn't just mean you live forever post-mortem. This means you have a whole quality of life in the here and now, not just a quantity of life. "And will not be judged, but has crossed over from death to life." Here's another one. "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as Scripture has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." Or here's another. "I have come that they may have" what? "Life and have it to the full." How does that sound? And then, of course, the classic, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Jesus has life on offer. And how do we get that life? Well, put simply, we follow Jesus. Or in the language of John, we believe in Jesus. Unfortunately, that word believe is misleading in English. In Greek, it's crystal clear. But in English, it's a bit confusing because when I hear that word, I kind of think, well, nod my head in agreement. Like, oh yeah, I believe in that. Like I believe in, I don't know, that airplanes fly or something like that. But in reality, to believe means to put your trust in and commit to. That's a definition, by the way, straight out of a lexicon. To believe in Jesus is to put your trust in and commit all of your life to Jesus, or in our language, to follow Jesus. And that's how you get life. You could put it this way. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. Let me say that again. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. This is basic math, right? This is not rocket science. Your life, meaning the full experience that is your human story, is the byproduct of your lifestyle. By lifestyle, I mean the rhythms and the routines and the rituals that make up your morning, your workday, your evening, your work week, your weekend, your monthly rhythm, your annual rhythm, your life, how you spend your time, how you spend your money. All of that has an end result that is your life. That's why rhythms are so important, why routines, why all of that matters. As Stephen Covey said back in the height of his popularity in the 90s, we achieve inner peace when our schedule is aligned with our values. Because the fact is that your life, when you get to the end, is the byproduct of your lifestyle. And the invitation of Jesus was and still is, come and follow me, or put another way, come and adopt my overall style of life. Come pattern your life after mine in order to experience the life that I have on offer. Now, at Bridgetown, as we see it, when we say follow Jesus, or when we talk about discipleship, or we even prefer the language of apprenticeship to Jesus, and if that language is a bit strange or alien to you, the Greek word that we translate disciple or follower is mathetes. And a number of scholars have made the point that actually the best word we have in the English language to capture the idea behind a mathetes is an apprentice, because it wasn't just a follower in the sense of, I follow Jesus on Instagram, or a disciple in the sense of like a church kind of, I go to Bible study a lot. It was a whole life apprentice. That's the idea behind it. Now, as we frame it, to follow Jesus or to apprentice under Jesus is to organize your life around three goals. Be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what he did. A short word on each. First, goal number one is to be with Jesus. By that we mean what Jesus called abiding in the vine. What Paul called prayer without ceasing. Or Brother Lawrence, if you've ever read that 15th century Parisian, what he called the practice of the presence of God. It is a whole life orientation to the reality of God all around you, where your mind just goes back to God all through the day. I think of that quote I've used before from Dallas Willard about how the needle of a compass constantly returns to the north. The end goal is that your mind, your awareness would constantly return back to God, return back to God, return back to God. Every time you just get a little mental breath of air, just you're stuck at a red light or there's a lull in your inbox, you're thinking that never happens, but hypothetical scenario, or there's just a quick moment when you wake up and you're lying in bed a minute or two before the alarm goes off, you're thinking that doesn't happen either, hypothetical scenario. Like just you have that moment, your mind goes back to God. Your mind goes back to God. And as you live from a heart posture of awareness of and connection to the Holy Spirit, you experience a quality of life that is all that Jesus has for you. And that is the first goal. If you're new to this whole Jesus thing, you're new to Bridgetown, you're thinking, man, where exactly do I start? Right there. That's the baseline. Just start with abiding. Just pause a few times through your day and let your mind go back to God. And it might feel like a discipline at first, but eventually as you retrain your brain through neuroplasticity in the language of science, through prayer in the language of the New Testament, as you retrain your brain, which is the portal to your whole person, to go back to God all through the day, you will experience life. That is goal number one of apprenticeship to Jesus. Secondly, is to become like Jesus. So if you've been around Bridgetown, you know that we are passionate about the intersection of faith and work. We reject the bifurcation of who I am versus what I do, and a lot of people want to pit the two against each other, and we just say absolutely not. The two are inseparable and connected at the hip, who you are and what you do. That said, with that disclaimer aside, I believe now more than ever that the greatest thing that God gets out of your life, the greatest thing that you get out of your life, the greatest thing that your family and friends get out of your life is the person that you become through apprenticeship to Jesus. Like at the end of the day, when all is said and done, all in your life that will last forever is your relationships. Think about that for a minute. Your relationship with your family, with your community, with your best friend, with the people to your right and to your left who follow Jesus will last forever. Some of you are thinking that is terrible news. Well, that's a whole other sermon series. But your relationships will last forever, and the person that you become. Your character is the only thing that you will carry with you past death and into the life of the age to come. Now, call this whatever you want, transformation or emotional health or maturity or character, but at the end of the day, when you come to the end of your life, at whatever age that is, you have to have set the metrics for success. And the metrics for success are not the numbers in your bank account or how many followers you have online or your book sale or how many businesses you started or whatever it is for you. It is the relationships that you invest in and the man or the woman that you become through apprenticeship to Jesus. So the next goal of following Jesus is through this life of abiding or the practice of the presence of God to be transformed as you open yourself up to the Spirit of God all through the day and through practice and through community, to be transformed by the Spirit of God to be more like Jesus, and in doing so to become more like your real true self. Finally, goal number 3 is to do what he did. So if you're an apprentice here tonight, I'm guessing there's 2 or 3 of you, and if you're an apprentice to an electrician, your goal is like to eventually be able to wire a house. If you're an apprentice to a plumber, your goal is to eventually be able to plumb a house. If you're an apprentice to Jesus of Nazareth, think about that for a minute, your goal is to eventually be able to do the kinds of things that Jesus was on about. Think of the 4 Gospels: healing the sick, casting out demons, praying, prophesying over people, teaching the way, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, eating with people far from that kingdom, and so on. That's the end goal, and it takes time, but if your apprenticeship to Jesus is to grow, to mature into the kind of person who just naturally does the kinds of things that Jesus is into. So, be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what he did. Now, whatever language you frame that around, okay, and change all of the language to suit your own style. But those 3 categories are essentially what it means to follow Jesus or to follow the way of Jesus. And when you organize your entire life around those three goals. And you think of following Jesus not as a hobby or like a weekend activity or kind of when I'm in the mood, but you think of following Jesus as the driving engine of your life. The end result is you experience life. But by organized, I actually mean like you get it on your calendar, like you put it into your morning routine, into your weekend, you schedule in practices that turn all of these ideas into a reality. I read this recently from Dallas Willard, quote, "You must arrange your days so that you are experiencing deep contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday life with God." How good is that? You must arrange your days, your morning routine, your work week, your weekend, how you do life, so that you are experiencing deep contentment, joy, and confidence in your everyday life with God. That's what Jesus has for you, nothing less than life. But to get in on that life, you have to actually follow Jesus. Now, back to our vision, practicing the way of Jesus together in Portland. Now that you have a bit more of a handle on this idea of the way of Jesus and the life that is the byproduct of it, notice three things. First off, notice this takes practice. So if you're still open to Matthew, just take a look again at Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. Again, the Sermon on the Mount. So we're teaching through the Sermon on the Mount right now, and it's a fascinating sermon. It's basically Jesus' manifesto for the way of Jesus. So it's all of his teachings in one place about how to live as an apprentice of Jesus of Nazareth. And he's brutally honest and down to earth and open and transparent about the human condition. So it's full of lust and anxiety and anger, and you sin against people and people sin against you. Yet at the same time, would you agree that Jesus sets the bar kind of high? Would you agree with that statement? To the point that some people read the Sermon on the Mount and write it off as a pipe dream, as unrealistic, as utopian, or sure, that sounds nice, but like, let's be honest, do not worry, like you clearly did not have an iPhone, Jesus, or whatever. But often we miss what Jesus begins and he ends the Sermon on the Mount with, and that is this idea of practice. Take a look at chapter 5, verse 19. This is the last paragraph right before his first command. You've heard it said, but I say to you. Take a look, 19. "Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever," here it is, "practices and teaches these commands," that he's about to lay out, "will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Then at the very end, turn to the very end, chapter 7, look down at the very last paragraph. Here's Jesus' outro, right? Verse 24. "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into" what? "Practice is like a wise man or who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into" what? "Practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew," fall in Portland, "and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." By the way, that's the last line in the Sermon on the Mount. Just think about how haunting that is. Imagine if I were to end a teaching with like, "All right, so here's all the stuff I have to say, and then here's my outro. Basically, if you take all of this and you go put it into practice, you'll do really well. No matter what comes at you, your house," which is a metaphor for your life, "will stand the test of time. But if you take everything we just said and you don't put it into practice, you just kind of, whatever, listen, it's in one ear and out the other, when the storm of life comes, and trust me, it will come, your house, your life will fall with a great crash." And then I walk off the stage. Can you imagine how awkward that would be? I have to talk. I can't actually do that. Nobody would ever come back. What a haunting way to end a sermon with this idea of here's what happens if you practice, here's what happens if you don't practice. My point is very simple. Jesus assumes that this way of life that we just read about in chapter 5 to 7 in the Sermon on the Mount, that it is going to take practice. There's a saying in the spiritual formation literature that I love, and it's this: it's not about trying really hard, but training really hard. And that at first might sound a bit like semantics. Actually, it's quite helpful. So let's say, hypothetical scenario, that you decide this fall, summer's over, and you really want to get in shape. So you join 24-Hour Fitness, or if you're not quite as cool like me, LA Fitness, because it was cheaper and you don't feel so bad about your body when you're there. Because it's not quite the same meat market, and you feel like, okay, there's other normal human beings here. So, hypothetical scenario. Let's say you join a gym, and you say, I want to get in shape, and you say, I want to bench press my own weight. How do you bench press your own weight? I've never done that before, but I've read a blog on it, all right? So how do you bench press your own weight? Do you just go to the gym, sign up, get your membership, go up to the bench press machine and just start with, 175 pounds or whatever it is you weigh, and just try really hard? Is that how you do it? What would happen if you tried that? Yeah, you would die. The bar would fall and collapse your chest cavity. Now, maybe if Gerald was there to pray over you and prophesy over you, like one of two things. Either you would make it a second or two and then you would die, or God would do a miracle and you would do it. But still, it would be a miracle. You would not have become the kind of person who can bench press your own weight. In order to repeat it, you would need yet another miracle. Does that make sense? So how do you bench press your own weight? Again, I can't, but I read a blog. Apparently, you go and you just start with the bar. And I know this because I have done this. It's 45 pounds. It's quite heavy. And you just start with the bar. And you're just like, I'm like, 45 or whatever. And then it's so great. Did you know they have 2.5-pound weights that you can put on each end? And I think it's actually for the yoga class, but I find it quite helpful. So you put these little weights on the end, and then you do that for a week, and then you put the 5-pound, and then you really up it to, and maybe you get up to 25 pounds, or so, you get up to whatever, but over time, through training, not through trying really hard, but through training really hard, it's still hard work. Through training really hard, you grow, you mature, you become the kind of person for whom bench pressing your own weight is hard. It will always be hard, but it is well within your capacity as a human being. The problem is, very few of us approach apprenticeship to Jesus this way. So let's say there's a weakness in your life. It's lust, it's anxiety, it's depression, it's gossip, it's envy, it's greed, it's you fill in the blank. I'm just here to cheer you up. Let's say hypothetical, there's a weakness in your life. So many of us, our approach to change, growth, transformation is trying really hard. We're inspired by a teaching or a book we read or worship. We think, okay, this week, no more lust. And we go out and we try really hard. That is the spiritual equivalent of just trying really hard to bench press your own weight when you're out of shape. It just does not work. We crash and we burn. And in some cases, the end result is spiritual death. What if we were to come at it the same way that you come at any other kind of exercise, not through trying really hard, but through training really hard? What does that look like for a follower of Jesus? Very simple. It looks like the practices of Jesus, or what through church history have come to be called the spiritual disciplines, which are disciplines or practices of mind and body by which you open up your whole person to the power and presence and person of the Holy Spirit in order to be transformed from the inside out. So one way to, say, overcome lust or anxiety or bitterness or greed is you just go out this week and you try really hard. Have fun with that. Another way to overcome this, that, or the other, to become more like Jesus, to experience life, is you wake up tomorrow morning before you go about your day, before you even turn on your phone, you just start your day in the scriptures and in prayer. Tomorrow afternoon, halfway through your workday, you just have a little calendar reminder, just 10 minutes in there, and you just slip out through the back office, or you go to a random closet, whatever, at the office, and you just hide in there with the mop bucket or whatever, and you just read a psalm. Just a hypothetical scenario. I actually have the flu tonight. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off. I apologize. But my point is, you take a moment in the afternoon and you pray. This next weekend, you set aside an entire day just to Sabbath, just to rest and worship. You give a percentage of your income to set your heart free. You share a meal with the community on Wednesday night or whatever. Just the basics, just the spiritual disciplines, just the practices of Jesus. And through each one, you open up your whole life to the Holy Spirit, and you are transformed. Now, it's still hard work, but it's a lot easier than trying really hard. One is impossible, the other is hard. I'll take hard over impossible 7 days of the week. My point is, it's through practicing the way of Jesus And by that, I don't just mean like you keep at it, you keep at it, you keep at it. That, sure, over years of your life, yes. But by that, I mean more than anything, the practices of Jesus. When you take on Jesus' overall style of life, you just watch what happens, how Jesus' life starts to flow through you. Secondly, the other thing I want you to notice is this happens in community. If your Bible is still open there to Matthew chapter 5, have a look at verse 13. Here's a classic line. You are the salt of the earth. Or verse 14, you are the light of the world. Now, one thing that's easy to miss in the Sermon on the Mount, because it's translated from Greek into English, and in English we don't have a plural you, so like you is singular or plural, unless if you're from the South, unless if y'all are from the South. If Bethany were here, she'd say y'all, right? We don't have that unless if you live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's easy to miss that every single you in the Sermon on the Mount is plural, with the exception of two of them that are in the section we just wrapped up on the discipline of secrecy, where Jesus says, when you go to pray. That's the one time that it's singular, when you go to fast, like when he's teaching on the discipline of secrecy. All the other yous in all 3 chapters are plural. Meaning what? Meaning this isn't for you, this is for y'all. I'm just here, just the spirit of Bethany is alive and well. This isn't a manifesto for how you are to live or how I am to live, but for how we are to live the way of Jesus together. Jesus just assumes that you follow him in community. That's like non-optional for Jesus. That's not even on the table. That's not a question in Jesus' mind. Like Jesus did not have an apprentice. He had apprentices, not singular, but plural. And for Jesus, he just assumes, well, of course, you practice the way of Jesus, not kind of by yourself and you come to church once in a while and you listen to a podcast. No, you actually are working this out with a group of people. Now, due to the size of Bridgetown Church, and we're not a mega church, but we are large enough that the Sunday gathering, as great as it is, and we love it, is no longer an effective vehicle for community. So we have these 2 rhythms of Sunday and Bridgetown communities, what we call church around a stage and church around a table. And Sunday is a great vehicle for worship, for teaching, for vision, but for community, we really do that off of a Sunday context and around a table with the same group of people on what we call a Bridgetown community. And again, we just invite all of you into this. If you and I were to sit down and have coffee and you were to say, tell me your story, if I had, say, half an hour to tell you my story, for sure, one of the key inflection points that I would talk about was 6 years ago when Matt and Anna moved into the house across the street from us. Prior to that, so on the Myers-Briggs, I'm a high introvert, and for most of my life, I was a part of a church or even in church leadership, and I would come on Sundays, and I had a few good friends, but that was it. I was not in community, not in the sense of in-depth, open, honest relationships around the way of Jesus, and I was fine with that. Again, I'm an introvert. I'm like, is a book community? Does that count? Or a podcast? I like that too, whatever. And Matt and Anna moved, but I started to realize, oh my gosh, I'm missing. There's a whole facet, there's a whole dimension of the kingdom of God that I'm missing out on just through coming on Sundays and a few good friends who follow Jesus. And so Matt and Anna moved in across the street, and we started to eat together and do life together and vacation together and commute together and all of that. And then a few more people moved in, and now my community was all at church this morning, but now we're up to 14, 15 adults or something like that. And let me tell you, it has become one of the most important spiritual disciplines in my life. The simple, unglamorous, at times kind of monotonous and tiring at the end of a long day act of just eating a meal with the same group of 14 people on my front patio every single Tuesday night has been life-changing. And we want this so bad for you. If you're not in community yet, if you're in that spot of I come on Sundays and I have a friend here or a friend there, but I'm not actually in community by that definition, man, you're missing out. It's no guilt trip at all. No shame, but you're missing out on a whole dimension of the kingdom of God. And if you want to grow and mature and you want transformation and you want the life that Jesus has on offer, then you need to step into this. Now, some of you that have done this know how hard it is. And trust me, it is not easy. Nothing good in life is. And so some of you need to get back into something that you've dropped off from, or you need to recommit to your community, or you need to step in for the first time and push past your fear and insecurity and anxiety or what if, because there is life that Jesus has on offer, practicing the way of Jesus together. And then finally, notice that all of this happens in Portland. We're in a place which for us is Portland, Oregon. You know, more and more with the rise of the digital age, and of course with all the talk about globalism, the world is becoming more and more placeless. So sociologists are talking a lot right now about the non-place. That's a technical term. In layman's speak, it's like when you walk into a mall or an airport or an H&M or a Starbucks, it doesn't matter if you're in downtown Portland or in Singapore, it feels exactly the same. Am I right? Have you ever been to an H&M? You're like, oh, wow, I love the way they redid this one. No, it's exactly the same. You ever been to a Target and you're like, whoa, I love how this is contextualized to whatever. No, it's exactly, you even know like, oh, the aisle, the toys are in that section, right? I need batteries, okay, that's in the Northwest section or whatever. You know it in your head. Like that's just the way the world is. And you see this trend in the church. With the rise of the internet church. I saw it this morning on Instagram somewhere. It was like, sign in to our internet campus. I'm like, it was like an internet church. I'm like, internet church, that's an oxymoron. With all due respect, there is no such thing. You see it with the rise of celebrity Christianity and all of that. But where people listen to another church in another city or in another state or even in another country and then claim that's my church. And while we're all for podcasting, and we think that's great, but we're far more for community. We have come to believe that the church is not just a people, it is a people in a place. And for us, that place is Portland. And by Portland, we mean the city itself. And our dream for our place is to see the kingdom of God come in Portland as it is in heaven. You hear that line all the time. Again, not a slogan. That is our dream for the kingdom, for the rule, the reign of God to come over our city. This is why all of our Bridgetown communities are neighborhood-based, because the dream, and of course life is far from perfect, but the dream is that you live within walking distance or close to it from your Bridgetown community, and you're practicing the way together. It's why those of you that live outside the city limits, we love you and we welcome all, and we ask you to pray and to seriously think about moving in. When you think about Jesus and his missionary strategy, for lack of a better word, it was very simple. John chapter 1, quote, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." Let me say that again. The Word became flesh, made his dwelling among us. We love Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of that line. The Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. That was Jesus' missionary strategy. Move into the neighborhood. Jesus came to first century Israel as a first century Hebrew. He came to the synagogue as a rabbi. He came to Galilee as a Galilean, and he literally made his home in Capernaum and made that his base. In the same way, if we want to see the kingdom of God come in Portland as is in heaven, a church service will not accomplish that. As much as we love a church service, but a whole bunch of people here for a few hours will not accomplish that, unless if maybe you go out to dinner afterwards and you tip really, really well. Does that count? Not quite, but do tip well, please. But the reality is the kingdom of God will come when people who follow Jesus live here and pay rent here and work here and sleep here and exercise here and walk the dog here and grocery shop here and go to the park here and live in community here and worship God here and pray here and walk the streets of this city one prayer at a time until we see the kingdom of God come in Portland as it is in heaven. And again, you're invited to join us in that. So, practicing the way of Jesus together in Portland, that is our vision. And if you're up for that, and again, I say if you're not, no pressure at all. In fact, one of the reasons is like a hidden motivation. One of the reasons that we do a vision series every year is cull is a really mean word, but to make sure we're all on the same page. To make sure that you're here and you want to be here, because we're not just looking for warm bodies to fill a pew to make us feel better or whatever, or to help with our budget. We're looking for people who believe what we believe, who want to practice the way of Jesus, who want to do that together in community, want to do this in the city. And of course, we're all in process, of course, and you're welcome wherever you're at. Some of you are like, I don't even know if I believe in Jesus yet. We're so happy that you're here. But that said, we are looking for people who want in. And if there is like a resonance with you at a gut level, you say, yeah, I'm into that, then basically there's 5 things that we ask of you. And this is updated language for those of you that have been through basics from gather, scatter, serve, give. Just same idea, just updated for our current moment. And it's 1, practice the way of Jesus. So like organize your whole life around be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what he did. 2, in a Bridgetown community. So if you're not in a community, we ask you to join one. Basics starts next Sunday in the afternoon. Please come, please sign up. Go to our website for more. That's basically how we get people into a community in or near your neighborhood. And if you're in one, recommit as we hit fall. Most of our communities are sitting around a table this coming week to pull out that commitment doc where we kind of actually talk in depth about this is what we commit to, how we commit to be family together. 3 is gather on Sundays. So check, you've already done that. Well done. That's really easy. You're already here. But we do ask you to gather on Sundays like on a regular basis, to basically be here every single week, unless if you're out of town for work or something like that, but to be here, to center all of your life around God, not just around a table, but even here together. 4, to serve. Our church is put on by 99.7% unpaid people. So we have a staff of about 12 people or something like that, and then hundreds and hundreds of you that come on Sundays. It takes hundreds of people just to pull off our 3 gatherings on Sundays at Old Laurelhurst on Sunday morning, which is going great, by the way, and then here at First Baptist on Sunday nights, not to mention the 70-something of you that serve for Foster Parents Night Out, or those of you that serve with Refugee Care Collective to welcome a refugee into our family, all of you leading a Bridgetown community. Can we just give some love right now to all of our Bridgetown community leaders? We're so grateful for you. Not to mention the people serving with my son Jude in the middle school group right now, or a high school group on Thursday nights. We just have people, not to mention all of you that are behind the scenes and you're serving by hosting your community or a welcome box for a foster child, just behind the scenes. We're so grateful for you. And Jesus was a servant, and he came as a servant, and we want to follow Jesus' example. And so we're asking you to serve. And then finally to give. And by that we mean it literally, like we're asking you to give money to our church, to practice the ancient spiritual discipline of tithing. That's a Hebrew word meaning tenth. It means giving 10% of your income, in our case, to the church. And some of you are not ready for that yet. A lot of you were ready for that a long time ago. We just ask you to step into that wherever you're at. So if that's 1% or 5%, great. Just start where you're at. You will get out of this church what you put into it. One of our leaders said so well a few days ago, he's like, the people that enjoy church the most, it's the people that come early and serve. It's the people that give, the people that volunteer, the people that are in, that actually get the most out of the experience that is church. And if you're thinking, man, that sounds overwhelming, it's like you want following Jesus to be like my whole life thing. That's kind of our agenda, yes. And even the church, this might sound a little weird, and I'm a biased source. I'm a pastor, I work here, I get it. So I'm a biased source. You have to filter me out. But I honestly think that the church should be front and center in our life. And I have a very high view of career and life and neighbor. I get all of that. And I'm raising a family, and I get how busy life is. But especially in this kind of a cultural moment, in a post-Christian, progressive moment where the weight, the tide, the gravitational pull of culture is against us, not for us, we need more than ever to anchor ourselves together as a community around the way of Jesus. This will not work as a hobby, as a side project, as a thing you do when you're in the mood. It has to be following Jesus together in the city. That has to be the driving force in your life. Now, to end, all of this is invitation, every single thing I said. And that goes without saying, kind of. We invite you to practice the way of Jesus, to adopt his overall lifestyle, to start with something as simple as tomorrow morning, before you turn on your phone, before you go to work, just take a little bit of time. You're like, take 10 minutes, take anything. Read your Bible and pray. Just Sabbath, just worship on Sundays, just live in community, just adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. We invite you to live in community, to pick a group of people that you may love, you may like, but we'll settle for like. You're like, I wish. Well, that's a whole other sermon series. But whatever, just to pick a group of people and to live in community. To serve, to give, so on and so forth. But all of this is invitation, not coercion. We were sitting around, I'm just about done, but we were sitting around as a staff a few months ago. Gerald, I think you were gone for this on sabbatical. And we were strategizing, and this is like, I'll admit this, we were strategizing about how to get more of you into Bridgetown communities, because we just ache for so many of you that come on Sundays, maybe know one or two people, but aren't actually in community and a community of practice. And we just, it's transformed our life, and we know it is the way of Jesus, and we want it so badly for you. And so we were strategizing about how we get more people into a Bridgetown community. And Gavin, who's on our community team, he just, at one point, there was a lull in the conversation, he just said, coercion is not a fruit of the Spirit. And it was this like drop the mic moment. We're all like, #that. Oh, you're right. It doesn't say like the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, coercion. Like, that's not there. Jesus did not coerce anybody. There was no guilt trip. There was no shame. There was no manipulation. There wasn't even PR. There was not even a sales pitch. He just would say, oh yeah, come follow me. I have life on offer. But actually sometimes he would say, come take up your cross. The cross was a symbol of death. It was a way of saying, come die to yourself, your agenda, your way of life, you have to make sacrifices. Come follow me. Oh, on the other side, you will experience life. And some people would hear that and say, yes, we're all in, and give up everything and follow Jesus. We know those people by name because they were transformed. Other people would hear Jesus offer and walk away. I just read that story a few days ago in Luke about the rich young dude. Jesus said, sell your possessions, give to the poor, treasure in heaven, and come follow me. And all we read is that he, quote, went away sad. Some people hear the invitation of Jesus and it's just too much. They're just not there. They're not ready for it. And we don't know. Maybe he started to follow Jesus later. Maybe he come back. We have no clue. Maybe he ended in another way. We don't know. He went away sad. Other people sound all into it like Jesus, we want to follow you. And then Jesus would actually try to talk people out of it a little bit. Like this is one part, and also in Luke where he goes, well, the foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but I'm homeless. He's basically saying, are you sure you want to follow me? Are you sure you can? And then another spot, he would say, you have to count the cost. Like he would literally warn people against following him. There was no PR, much less coercion. My point is very simple. Jesus did not coerce or bully or manipulated. He just invited. And so we just invite you. And I ask your forgiveness for times in the past where I have not modeled Jesus' form of leadership well. I'm in process, as all of you. You know that. You're well aware of that. I'm not perfect. And I've been convicted by God, even recently through this season, that leadership is not about coercion. Is it about example, and it is about invitation. So there's nothing that our leadership will ask of you that we're not doing ourselves. We're all in a community. We're all doing the practices of Jesus. We all live in the city, all of that. There's nothing we're asking of you that we will not do. And everything that we ask is all invitation. You have to decide whether or not you want to follow Jesus. I was eating a meal a few months ago with a hero / mentor of mine, and he's an older, wiser pastor, well-known, a generation before me. He's a best-selling author and pastor of this well-known church down in California. And my best friend Dave and I, who also leads a church, were there with him for lunch, and we were just asking him all sorts of questions about life and church and leadership. And he was a mentee of Dallas Willard for a number of years, I think 20 actually. And so we were talking about Willard, and we were talking about Willard's definition of the kingdom of God, which was, quote, the range of God's effective will. And he just made the point that, we all have a kingdom by that definition. We all have a range of our effective will. We all have a sphere of influence, if not control. For sure, your mind, so you control what you do or do not think about. Your body, you control what you do or do not do with your body. Many of us have a sphere of influence. If you're a parent, you have a range of your effective will over your children. You're I'm not in control of my children. That's a whole other teaching. But a range, if you have a workplace or a ministry or a platform, you have a sphere of influence. My point is all of us have some kind of a kingdom. You are a king. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. You're a king, you're a queen, you're a ruler. And if nothing else, you rule over your mind, your body, and your sphere of influence. And this older gentleman had this great one line. He just said this: it's very hard to lead people without overriding their kingdom. And man, I've been thinking about that for months. It's very hard to lead people without overriding their kingdom. I know from experience how true that statement is. So we want to lead you or pastor you into the way of Jesus in community, in our city. But at the end of the day, you are made in the image of God. You're a king or a queen. You have a kingdom. You have to decide, and Jesus was crystal clear on this, what you will do with the short handbreadth that is your life. Will you take up your cross? Will you follow Jesus? Will you do it in community? And as a result, will you experience life? Every single one of you are invited, not only to Bridgetown Church, sure, basics is next week, sign up, but you are invited to follow Jesus. Let's stand and pray together.